This video is brought to you by friend of the channel Squarespace. Stick around to learn more about how their intuitive website creation tools help people turn their hobbies into careers and dreams into reality. Gamers, what day is it? What month? Am I even still alive? Let me do a quick death save throw to check. That's right, ladies and gents, I am not remotely ashamed to say that this moment right here represents the first time in a week that I have done anything other than play Baldur's Gate 3. I'm nearly 50 hours deep at this point and I haven't even finished Act 1. Apparently that's the smallest of the 3 acts. How are people finishing this game in like 40 hours? I don't understand. It's humbling to think that just about the same time that we might be done with Baldur's Gate 3, Starfield will be knocking at our door, but not before Armored Core 6, or Wayfinder, or that Guild Wars expansion, or Immortals of Avium, or Sea of Stars. Can video games just like calm down for a bit, please? No, they cannot. They have no chill, and we're here to talk about them. That's what this show is for, so let's get to it, shall we? Here comes the news. All right, let's take it from the top, literally. Baldur's Gate 3, absolutely gangbusters. This weekend, it beat its previous concurrent player count record, peaking at 875,000 concurrent players. This makes Baldur's Gate 3 the 9th most concurrently played game on Steam ever, just a smidgen behind Hogwarts Legacy. More impressive than those huge numbers are the critic scores, because at the time of writing, Baldur's Gate 3 was the equal highest rated game of all time on OpenCritic, tied with Super Mario Odyssey, which, let's be real, is pretty good, but it's no Super Mario 64. The reason that Baldur's Gate 3 is so high on OpenCritic is because OpenCritic doesn't track legacy titles like Tony Hawk or Ocarina of Time or Soul Calibur and all of the other 10 out of 10 classics that arrived well before OpenCritic's time. Metacritic does track that data though, and over there, Baldur's Gate 3 is now the highest rated PC game of all time. Now it's important to note that right now reviews are still coming in for this one, as the game is so huge and so long that reviewers such as myself are taking their sweet ass time. This means that Baldur's Gate 3's overall ranking may shift down a little as more reviews come in, especially if the reports about late game bugs are to be believed, which they probably should be since it's pretty widely reported. Regardless, it's clear that Baldur's Gate 3 is a phenomenal game and one of the finest RPGs ever made. There was an issue that cropped up this week where it was revealed that a number of people who worked on translating the game into different languages weren't properly credited by the outlet that performed that service for Larian. Larian have demanded a full list of names ASAP and plan to patch those names into the credits. Good guy Larian strikes again. Just in case you're wondering, I have absolutely every intention of reviewing this game at some point, but given its massive size, I may have to put it on pause for a while I jump over to other titles to hit embargoes. So stay tuned for a Baldur's Gate 3 review, but don't expect it anytime soon. Speaking of reviews, did you guys see what's going on with Overwatch 2 on Steam? Oh man, this is a big one. Okay, so you might have heard Overwatch got a sequel. It's called Overwatch 2, and the biggest thing that it adds is a 2 in the title. That and an egregious cash shop that's a clear downgrade from the loot boxes of Overwatch 1. And you know, you really done fucked up when loot boxes are a superior form of monetization than whatever you're rocking now. Unsurprisingly, Overwatch 2 has not found the sort of broad-based success that Blizzard had hoped for when they pushed it out the door unready and over-monetized. As a result, overall engagement is down, a fact that Blizzard themselves admitted in a recent earnings call, but they pointed to the upcoming Invasion PvE update as a light on the hill. That's the scraps of the single-player content that the whole of Overwatch 2 was predicated on, and while we all thought that content would be free because this is a free-to-play game, it turns out that it's not. It's like $15, and it's meant to be kind of just the same as the free PvE events that Overwatch 1 used to dish out back in the day. For what it's worth, Blizzard have said that they are unconcerned with the decline in player engagement, calling it the normal ebb and flow of players. Still, they seem concerned enough that they decided to release the game on Steam for the first time ever, where before it was exclusive to Battle.net for PC. That's a welcome decision for two reasons. Number one, we all like playing our games on Steam, it's nice. And number two, Steam reviews. God bless them. You just knew that people were going to have their fun with the chance to review a Blizzard title on an official platform like Steam, and sure enough, Overwatch 2, sequel to the 2016 Game of the Year, is now the lowest rated game in the history of Steam. 127,000 reviews, only 9% of them positive. By way of weighted ranking, this makes Overwatch 2 the worst game on the Steam platform. Even Golem managed to hit 35%. And Golem is, it's Golem. What else do you need to say about it other than it's Golem? Is Overwatch 2 the worst game you can play on Steam? No, but obviously that score reflects a lot of pent-up sentiment, fury at Blizzard for fumbling one of gaming's biggest bags. Overwatch was not only hugely successful for Blizzard, it meant a lot to people. Its iconic cast of characters, its fresh take on the hero shooter formula, and the passionate community all combined to create this phenomenon, one that should have meant great things for the future of the franchise. Blizzard promised so much and had every chance to deliver it, but the stalling of development on Overwatch 1, the focus on competitive play and esports, the shift to free-to-play supported by overpriced microtransactions, and the cancellation of the promised PvE mode have left Overwatch 2 feeling rudderless and its community disappointed. No amount of Rule 34 could take away the pain, so they turned to the next best thing: Steam reviews. And that, my friends, is how blue balls will get you a 9% positive rating on Steam. Moving right along, while everyone is laser focused on Starfield dropping in just a few short weeks, rumors abound that an Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion remake may be on the way. This news comes courtesy of a post on the Gaming Leaks and Rumors subreddit. One person claimed to be a former employee of Virtuous, the studio leading the charge on the upcoming Metal Gear Solid 3 remake. This person was apparently vetted by the subreddit's mods and confirmed to be an actual former employee of Virtuous, so if that's true, it certainly lends credibility to these claims. This person says that Virtuous is actually working on 5 projects. The Metal Gear Solid 3 remake is one of them, an expansion for Amazon's New World is another, and there's also some new original IPs in the mix. In addition to those, they claim that an Oblivion remake or remaster is also coming. Apparently, it's going to make use of a pairing system, allowing the game to run in the original engine as well as in Unreal Engine 5. Not gonna lie, I'd like to see any Bethesda game running in an engine that didn't look like it got its last update back in 2001. As cool as this is, I will admit it's a little surprising. If any game is deserving of the remake treatment, it's Morrowind, but I get that's a much bigger job in terms of game design, since parts of Morrowind have definitely aged more poorly than Oblivion. Still, remade Oblivion in Unreal Engine 5? Hell yeah, man, I'd play that for sure. While we're on the topic of that sort of game, we got some new details about Obsidian's Avowed this week. This one was revealed a little while back, a first-person cinematic RPG set in the Pillars of Eternity universe. The original trailer was very dark in terms of its visual style, but the most recent trailer showcased a much brighter game with a very different visual palette that certainly sets it far apart from anything Bethesda had produced with the Elder Scrolls series. During an anniversary showcase posted on their YouTube channel, Obsidian revealed that Avowed started out as a co-op game, but said that it didn't feel Obsidian enough, pivoting it back to single player during development. They say they're leveraging the huge amounts of Pillars of Eternity lore already written, but they also want to welcome in a larger audience this time around. And they also said that they showed Avowed off to Microsoft as part of the acquisition process, revealing that Avowed has been in development for quite some time indeed. We all wanted Obsidian to make this type of game for a long time now, and they're finally making it. They're all pretty excited to talk about it, so I'm certainly looking forward to seeing what they've got cooking. We'll likely get our hands on it sometime next year. Sticking with Microsoft a bit longer, we did get some disappointing news about the upcoming Forza Motorsport due out in October. In a refrain that's becoming a little too familiar, the game's developers revealed this week that the game will ship without some things that they're calling legacy features. What are those legacy features? Well, spectator mode is out, okay. Racing with an AI in multiplayer is out, okay. Split screen is out. That is not okay. It mirrors the broken promise of 343, who swore black and blue that split screen would always be a part of Halo going forward before shipping Infinite without split screen, and then removing the feature from their promised roadmap. When it comes to Forza, you have to wonder if this relates to the bottleneck created by the Xbox Series S, the lower spec machine that Microsoft insists must have feature parity, so you can't ship split screen on Series X and leave it out on the S, for example. It has to work on both, says Microsoft. It's a problem that Larian couldn't solve, and that is why Baldur's Gate 3 won't be on Xbox until 2024 at the earliest. Again, I don't know that this is the reason for these last-minute feature cancellations in Forza, but it certainly wouldn't be surprising given the way developers are butting up against Microsoft's entry-level hardware at the moment. Speaking of hardware, we're getting a firmer picture of what we might expect from Nintendo's next console. Video Games Chronicle went out with this one, a reputable outlet who aren't going to burn their name for a few quick clicks. They claim to have spoken with multiple people with knowledge of the matter, and their sources say that Nintendo will launch a follow-up to the Switch at the back end of 2024, with production beginning very early to avoid the sorts of stock shortages we saw for both PS5 and Xbox Series X. Video Games Chronicle have said the details on the console are scarce, but they have confirmed it will be usable in handheld mode. Not at all surprising given the absolutely phenomenal breakout success of the Switch. They also say that sources have indicated that the new hardware will ship with an LCD screen instead of the superior OLED alternative, a move aimed at keeping costs low. They say details on backwards compatibility are scant, a crucial point given how big everyone's Switch library got this generation. Other rumors suggest that the new console will have more memory than the current Nintendo Switch, which would also be very unsurprising, and that the new model would still accept cartridges, since Nintendo do love them some proprietary physical media. Logically speaking, we all know that a Switch 2 is coming. The Switch is like the Methuselah of consoles at this point. It's so old, we ought to ask it to start paying rent if it's going to keep living under this roof. So a flashy new model in Christmas 2024 would be just what the doctor ordered. A quick lightning round to finish off. Wipeout is back, only not as you'd expect, and certainly not in any way that's going to make Sony happy. The original Wipeout has been ported to PC, and you can now play it in a web browser for free. I booted it up myself, and it runs absolutely beautifully, upscaled to I don't know what, but it looks hella crisp. The port is the work of a solo modder who has a message for Sony. Quote, "If anyone at Sony is reading this, please consider that you have, in my opinion, two equally good options. Either let it be, or shut this down and get a real remaster going. I'd love to help," end quote. I'm sure Sony's lawyers will carefully review these two options before responding with, "How about no?" Exoprimal dropped a few weeks back, and it hasn't been going too well with a rapidly declining player base on Steam that's likely to be reflected on other platforms. Not to worry though, because Capcom are leaving the door open to something that we'd all log in to check out: Dino Crisis themed crossover content. Speaking to Silicon Era when they were asked about the possibility of Dino Crisis content getting a look in, the game's director responded, quote, "Leviathan, the in-game AI, is the type of entity that will go to any means to collect a variety of useful combat data. If there's enough demand from players, Leviathan very well could make this a reality," end quote. Now substitute Leviathan for Capcom, and we can all lament that this just isn't true, because we have been begging for a Dino Crisis remake for years now, and if the closest we ever come is Exoprimal crossover content, then that's going to be a very sad day indeed. Ghost Runner 2 is getting a closed beta, and you can sign up for it right now. Not gonna lie, didn't think that Ghost Runner would be the sort of game that needed a beta, since it's an offline single-player game. But hey, if it means a better final product, then yeah, absolutely go for it. Sign-ups are live right now, but 505 have warned that spots are extremely limited, so just be aware of the long odds. Speaking of long odds, Ben Starr, the dude who absolutely crushed it as the voice of Clive Rosfield in Final Fantasy XVI, he's listed his dream video game voice acting gig, and you know what it is? He wants to voice Raziel if and when a Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver reboot ever happens. God damn, I love this man. As someone with Soul Reaver very near and dear to my heart, allow me to be the first to say, yes, absolutely yes. Raziel's original voice actor Michael Bell did an absolutely flawless job, but I think if the series is to be revived and brought into the current generation, some new voice talent may be required, and Ben Starr's voice, accent, and delivery seem tailor-made for the role. Let's hope the Crystal Dynamics will one day make that reboot happen, but I'm not holding my breath, since their plate is pretty full at the moment between that Perfect Dark game and that rumored Tomb Raider game, which hasn't even been announced yet. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, it's by no means an official announcement, but Stalker 2 may be headed our way as soon as December this year. That news comes courtesy of PlayOn, the game's publisher in select territories. They put up on their website a December release date, and while this hasn't been confirmed by the game's developers, PlayOn also hasn't removed it from their website, which is what usually happens when erroneous release dates are updated to places they shouldn't be. Stalker 2 is going to be present and playable at Gamescom in August, so there's every chance that we get an official release date announcement at Opening Night Live hosted by Jeff Keighley. Until then, take this release date with a grain of salt. The other announcements this week come courtesy of a showcase that you may or may not have heard about. THQ Nordic hosted their own webinar this week, providing updates on previously revealed games while also showing off a whole bunch of new ones. Some of the announcements are pretty juicy. For example, would you believe it if I told you we're getting a Titan Quest 2? And I wouldn't believe it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, but 17 years after the release of the original, we are getting a sequel. Titan Quest was my jam back in the day. The visuals were so cutting edge within the ARPG genre. It's a genuine wonder why the series didn't maintain its momentum after that initial release. But hey, better late than never, right? No release date for this one yet, so expect it sometime next year at the earliest. We got an update on the previously revealed Gothic remake. A flashy new cinematic trailer reminded us that the game is still on the way, though there is no release date in sight. Sticking with the theme of what's old is new again, THQ Nordic are rebooting Outcast. The original is 20 years old now and was among the first open-world style 3D action games, depending on how you slice it. The reboot is titled Outcast: A New Beginning, and it looks like Xenoblade Chronicles crossed with Eurojank. I'm not gonna lie though, it actually looks pretty cool. Old school third-person traversal and combat crossed with more modern open world design and visuals. This could be alright, and THQ certainly weren't shy about showing off gameplay. This one looks pretty far along, so I'd expect it sometime early 2024. There's a new South Park game coming our way, and very ominously, it's in 3D. Anyone who played the old 3D South Park games from back in the day will know what I'm talking about. Will this one be any better? I don't know, man, but the very brief snippet of gameplay we saw in this trailer didn't look incredible. Oddly enough, Ubisoft set an extremely high bar with their 2 South Park games, which were turn-based RPGs of all things. Will South Park Snow Day live up to that Ubisoft legacy, or end up like those unforgettable 3D titles? We'll find out at some point in 2024, since there's no specific release window for this one yet. There's a new Trine game on the way on August 31st, Trine 5. I can't believe that there's 5 of them already. Last time I checked, I swear they were up to like Trine 2. What happened? Alone in the Dark is still on the way, arriving October 26th this year. There's also a prologue demo for that, which you can download right now, so go look that up on your storefront of choice if you're interested. The other thing you may want to check out is the demo for Tempest Rising. This one is loving homage to the old Red Alert games. I played this one a little whiles back and absolutely loved it, but I'm a sucker for Red Alert, so I'm an easy mark when it comes to this one. If you are too, then that demo is live right now for the next week or so, and then the game itself will drop sometime next year most likely. There were a few other small announcements during the showcase, but that was the bulk of them. However, there was one reveal to cap it off, and THQ smartly saved the best for last. All it's due. This is the teaser trailer for The Last Ronin, a video game adaptation of the graphic novel that tells the story of the last remaining Ninja Turtle, his identity a secret, fighting in a post-apocalyptic world using the weaponry of his fallen brothers. What a setup for a comic, and what a setup for a game, right? The existence of this was leaked earlier, but this official confirmation is welcome indeed. Unsurprisingly, no release date for this one yet, so expect it in 2024 at the absolute earliest. There were some delay announcements this week too. The first was for the Lollipop Chainsaw remake. This is the one from back in the day, written by James Gunn before he hit the big time with Guardians of the Galaxy, and now he's the DC Movies studio boss. This remake was meant to arrive sometime this year, but will now arrive in 2024. It's got a new title too. It's called Lollipop Chainsaw Repop. Kind of catchy, I like it. The other delay, or should I say delays, come courtesy of Devolver Digital, who in typical Devolver style decided to have a little fun with it. They hosted a showcase called Devolver Delayed that made it look and sound like a Nintendo Direct, complete with the same visual palette and upbeat announcers. Take a listen.
It turns out, making a game that jumps between 2D and 3D worlds also has to account for the 4th dimension, time.
The Plucky Squire is moving to 2024. With more delightful surprises and adventure galore.
Hey, that rhymed!
The showcase announced a number of delays, including the Plucky Squire, Stick It to the Stickman, Skate Story, Angerfoot, and Pepper Grinder. They're all being pushed into 2024. You know what? I'm okay with that. 2023 is absolutely stacked with AAA bangers, and I expect to be playing both Baldur's Gate 3 and Starfield until the end of the year anyway, so I'm happy to have Devolver's lineup waiting for me at the other side of that. I tell you what, these people at Devolver, they know what they're doing. They know how to put on a good showcase. So for this year's Summer Games Fest one, I mean, did you see the influencer they invited to do a cameo? Terrible. The hell were they thinking? So what came out last week? Well, surprise, Quake 2 got a remaster, and unlike Rockstar's remaster efforts, this one is actually good and worth the money and not a complete fucking scam. Stick that in your grenade launcher and smoke at Strauss Zelnick. The remaster is available on all platforms, including Switch. It features the original Quake 2 campaign, plus the bonus mission packs, The Reckoning and Ground Zero. Plus, it also includes Quake 2 64, because, yeah, why not? It features cut content, improvements to enemy AI, split-screen multiplayer for both PvE co-op and various PvP modes, and all of this is playable at 4K up to 120Hz. This is a free update if you already own the game. Alternatively, you can buy it for like $10, or you can grab it on Game Pass. A surprise to be sure, but a welcome one. Not so for Atlas Fallen. This one turned out to be one of those bad surprises. This one dropped last week for PlayStation, Xbox, and PC. I think we all had moderately high-ish hopes for this one. It wasn't looking extraordinary, but the pedigree of the developer, Deck 13, gave most who played the Surge a quiet confidence. Confidence misplaced, it seems, as Atlas Fallen sits at a disappointing 58% mixed on Steam and a fair 68 on OpenCritic. Not a bad score by any means, but also one that's going to struggle to get eyes on the title in what is a very, very very stacked year with a lot of high quality titles competing for your time and dollars. Austin reviewed this one here on the channel and he did not recommend it, unfortunately. He said its story was very phoned in and featured some truly bad voice acting, that the world was bland in its repetitive design and generic activities, and that the combat was undermined by some poor enemy design and some very wonky camera. I'll leave a link to that review below the like button, but bottom line, this one is probably best checked out on Game Pass or PS Plus sometime down the line. Stray Gods, the role-playing musical, arrived on all platforms last week. This was a really interesting looking narrative-led visual novel style experience that just so happened to be a musical, written by awesome composers like Austin Wintory and voiced by awesome voice actors like Laura Bailey, Felicia Day, Ashley Johnson, and more. The package seems to have come together pretty well, sitting at 90% very positive on Steam and a strong 79 on OpenCritic. IGN scored this one a 7 out of 10, saying, quote, "Stray Gods, the role-playing musical's murder mystery is predictable, but worth playing through a couple of times for its strong voice cast and customizable songs," end quote. While GameSpot really loved it, scoring it a 9 and saying, quote, "Stray Gods, the role-playing musical is a visual and auditory delight filled with superb musical performances," end quote. There were a few outlier scores, but if this is the sort of game that might appeal to you, you'll probably end up liking it. Congrats to this Aussie developer for their debut title. Love to see a bit of homegrown success. Final release of the week wasn't a game, but rather a movie, the Gran Turismo movie. It's so funny because in the marketing, they're all like, based on a true story. And it's like, bro, it's based on a video game. Come on, what are we doing here? But yes, apparently this is a combination of video game adaptation and true story adaptation. However, it appears as though the true story side of the equation has gotten the movie into a bit of trouble with critics, as the film apparently reframes the tragic death of a spectator in a way that a few people didn't appreciate. As such, the movie sits at 60% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes, but like most movies with low critic scores, it has a phenomenally high 98% rating from audiences. We often joke about the gap between critics and fans in the world of video games, but that is nothing compared to the divide between film critics and audiences. Regardless, you can make up your own mind because Gran Turismo is out now in cinemas, or just wait until it hits streaming platforms, which shouldn't be too long, I guess. Alright, so what's coming out this week? First of all, Everspace 2 hits PS5 and Xbox Series consoles today. This is a great game if you like arcade flyers, space shooters, shoot 'em ups, open world RPGs, looters, or any of the above. This one's already out on PC Game Pass, but will now be on console Game Pass as well. Really recommend checking it out. Moving Out 2 arrives on all platforms today. The first game turned one of the worst, most torturous experiences that a human being can endure, moving house, into a fun video game. Think Overcooked, only with furniture and everyone yelling, "Pivot!" Because, you know, that's the only moving joke we all know. Great co-op game if you're looking for a palate cleanser in between your 12-hour-long Baldur's Gate 3 sessions. Here's a really interesting one. Wayfinder arrives in early access for PC and PlayStation today. Now, this one comes from Airship Syndicate, who before this did Ruin King, Darksiders Genesis, and Battle Chasers. This is easily their most ambitious project, as it's a character-focused MMO light. It's published by Digital Extremes, the team behind Warframe, and it's quite similar to Warframe actually, since it's about unlocking new characters and farming for materials in procedural dungeons. Obviously, a totally different setting and art style, but if you like that Warframe thing, then there's a chance you might like this too. It is free to play, but during this early access period, you do need to buy a Founders Pack to get in. If any of this interests you, then you may want to check out this week's episode of the Friends Per Second podcast. We actually sat down with the game's creative lead and game director, the brothers Madureira. We had an awesome conversation with them about their long-term ambition to turn Wayfinder into a fully fledged MMO. I'll leave a link to that podcast below the like button. That scammy Red Dead 1 port hits Switch and PlayStation on the 17th. Please don't buy it. Shadow Gambit, The Cursed Crew hits all platforms bar the Switch on the 17th. This one comes from Mimimi Games, the team behind Shadow Tactics and the recent Desperados 3, which saw excellent reviews when that dropped. This is another real-time stealth strategy game, which is what the studio knows best. Initial previews for this one were very positive across the board. It's a niche style of game with an even more niche setting, but if Baldur's Gate 3 has got you in the mood for some CRPG-style shenanigans, then this might be a nice follow-up. I can't believe it, but Vampire Survivors hits the Switch on the 17th. What I can't believe is that this hasn't already been on the Switch since day dot. I mean, this launched at around the same time as the Steam Deck, and it became to the Steam Deck what Halo was to the Xbox. This is tailor-made to be played on a handheld, and I cannot wait to see 125 million Switch owners completely lose themselves to this video game. Not for nothing, but this release will also come at the same time as a free co-op update for all platforms that is going to make an already perfect game even more perfect. Madden NFL 24 arrives on all platforms bar the Switch on the 18th. We don't care about sports ball around here, so moving right along. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, though, that warrants a mention. Like many horror movie adaptations, this is another one of those asymmetrical PvP games where one person takes on the role of the killer and a bunch of other people play as scaredy cat survivors hiding in cupboards and running in all the wrong directions. This one is certainly not holding back in the gore department, so I hope you have a strong stomach. Me, not so much. I will enjoy this one from afar. Hope you horror fans enjoy yourselves. And finally, boy do I wish I had time for this one. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk arrives for the Switch and PC on the 18th. PlayStation and Xbox arrive next month. This is a spiritual successor to Jet Set Radio, and you gotta guess that Sega are at least a little bit mad about this one, as Bomb Rush Cyberpunk is certainly making no effort to separate itself from its source material. Hell, they even got Jet Set Radio's original composer to come back and do the music. That is some ballsy shit right there. It doesn't hurt that this looks absolutely rad, a true love letter to that iconic, unforgettable, and utterly unique game that helped establish the Dreamcast's legendary identity. For the console that burns twice as bright, burns half as long, or something to that effect. I don't know, there's probably a joke about the Red Ring of Death in there somewhere. Bomb Rush Cyberpunk reviews should be out in the next few days. I'll be sure to report back on the review roundup next week. All right, here's something I've had my eye on for a while now, so put this on your radar. Like many of the more interesting indie titles that bubble up to the top, An Ankou seems to be a clever blurring of genres, subgenres, mechanics, and gameplay loops, mixing it all together with a sort of agility that really only indie games can manage. It's ultimately a third-person roguelike where the aim is to survive as long as possible against increasingly hostile waves of enemies. More recently, that's a space dominated by vampire survivors and its various clones. But before that, we had Risk of Rain, which might be a better touchpoint here given the perspective, enemy density, and visual style. What really sets it apart though is the progression, which is based on crafting rather than straight item pickups, giving you a lot more agency over your build pathways and forcing you to farm the environment just as you farm enemies. From the moment I saw this, I was like, hey, this looks alright, and the demo that's been out for a while now has been really well received. This one is just about to launch into early access on the 18th, in fact, and maybe, just maybe, this ends up being the next Vampire Survivors level phenomenon, and you can say you got in on the ground floor. If you want to be one of those cool kids, I've left a link to it over on my Steam Curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff I've recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Sort of free stuff time now, and a few quick shouts this week. The first is for Epic, who right now are still giving away strategy game Europa Universalis and the creepy futuristic detective game Orwell. They disappear at the end of this week, replaced by Black Book, a narrative-led RPG adventure based on Slavic myths. I played this one during a Steam Next Fest actually, and quite enjoyed it, so I recommend checking it out, especially at that asking price. Amazon's Prime Gaming is now doing games every week, and this week it's Farming Sim 19. You laugh, but did you know that Farm Sim is an actual esport, and a pretty big one too? Bigger than the Overwatch League, but that's not really saying much at this point. The other giveaway title is Quake 4, a nice follow-up after you're done with Quake 2. Finally, the PS Plus Extra tier got its monthly refresh, and it is pretty solid indeed. The headline act is Destiny 2 The Witch Queen, arguably Destiny 2's greatest expansion, at least when it comes to the campaign side of things. Get it before Bungie deletes it from the game. No, I'm joking. They said they won't do that anymore, but do we believe them? That's another matter entirely. Moving Out 2 launches this week, and it is also day one on PS Plus. And that's not the only day and date launch on the service this month, because Sea of Stars will be available when it arrives on August 30th. This is from the team behind The Messenger, featuring the legendary composer from the Chrono Cross and Xenoblade games, Yasunori Mitsuda. PS Plus is definitely having a moment this month, which is nice to see, since it's usually Game Pass getting all the attention. Our feel-good story for the week can only be about one thing: Baldur's Gate 3, because after all of that discourse on Twitter, I think we need a chaser. And what better way to wash it all down than by knocking back a few bloopers and outtakes with Amelia Tyler, the extraordinarily talented voice actress who whispers honeyed words into our ears as the game's narrator. Many months ago, well before the game's 1.0 release, she uploaded some of the best outtakes from her recording sessions, and I think it's fair to say that she enjoyed delivering her lines just as much as we enjoyed listening to them. Show them what we mean, Stu.
Today's episode of Baldur's Gate 3 is sponsored by A Mental Breakdown and the number 2. The Village of Come on, get on my deck, love. Nobody talks to me. Nobody ever talks to me. I'm only the fucking dungeon master. It's fine. It's fine. You all just have conversations with each other. Mocap bastards. Who did this word with 4 apostrophes in it? What the fuck? That is some fantasy bullshit right there.
And with that, I'm literally going to go back and play Baldur's Gate 3 until my eyes and or ears bleed, just like I'm sure most of you are doing right now or thinking about doing. If this show has been some pleasant second monitor viewing or perhaps a fitting distraction while at work, then can I humbly request a pressing of that like button? It is a big deal. It makes the YouTube gods very happy. And I'm not going to lie, it makes me pretty happy too. If you are new around here and you'd like to come back next week, then be sure to subscribe and ding the notification bell. We are getting into the busy season right now, and I can promise you that some of the biggest videos I'll do this year will be dropping over the next few weeks, and Austin's working on some pretty cool stuff as well. I hope you'll join us. For now, thanks for stopping by, and a big thanks to this week's sponsor, Squarespace. Every day, I feel lucky to do what I do. I was working a job I wasn't loving and eventually tried my hand at content creation. It worked, and all these years later, here I am. I was lucky for a lot of reasons, but one of the big reasons was that YouTube existed, and so there was this platform for me that I could use to turn my dream into a reality. What if the website you need to turn your hobby into a career doesn't exist? What if you want to sell the ceramics that you make or photos that you take? What if you want to provide physiotherapy to people in your local area or promote a stall you run at a weekend farmer's market? Whatever you want to do to build a business, having a website is generally going to be very helpful, and there's no better place to build a website than Squarespace. Squarespace offer intuitive but powerful website creation tools. Never made a website before? Then Squarespace is for you, letting you customize their beautiful templates in no time. Already feel pretty comfortable with web creation tools and want more advanced functionality? Well, Squarespace is for you too, with features like SEO, plugins for numerous payment platforms, a schedule tool allowing clients to book appointments, as well as detailed analytics allowing you to track how your website is performing. Since 2003, Squarespace has been helping people turn their dreams into reality. So if there's a passion that you'd like to make a career, then check out Squarespace for free by visiting squarespace.com. And when you're ready to get serious, use offer code SKILLUP at checkout for 10% off your purchase of a domain name. Thanks Squarespace for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.